Today on It's a Good Sandwich, we are going to be going across the ocean, and we're going to take you to Spain, which is one of my favorite countries in the world. And we're going to show you how to make a Spanish tortilla, which is way different than a Mexican tortilla. Spanish tortilla, I would say, is as common in Spain as a hot dog is in America. And you can find it at any restaurant. It'll be an appetizer, it can be a main course, it can be many things. It's made in a pan, and we're going to use a frittata pan because it just makes it really easy to flip it. But in Spain, they actually use what they call a tortilla flipper. And a tortilla flipper, this is a tortilla flipper, but it's just a decoration. Anyways, this says para volver la tortilla, which is to flip the tortilla. Has a handle on the back. Most of the time they're made out of wood in Spain, but when it comes time to flip their tortilla, they'll cook one side of it, and as we start cooking, we'll show you. They'll cook one side of it, and then they'll put the tortilla pan on top, and then the tortilla flipper on top of the pan, and then they'll flip it over. They'll take their pan and then they slide it off back into their pan, and then they cook both sides. We use a frittata flipper, and that way we just flip it like this, real simple. But authentically, they would use a tortilla flipper. So for my Spanish friends, I don't want to offend you, but I'm going to be using a frittata flipper. So for our tortilla, we need 1 dozen eggs that are whisked, and these are kind of medium-sized eggs. We're going to use 2 potatoes, we're going to use 1/2 of an onion, we're going to use 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and 1 teaspoon of pepper. Also, when you cook the tortilla, it's very important that you use olive oil. Do not use canola oil or vegetable oil or any other type of oil. Always use olive oil. It changes the flavor. It is much better with olive oil. So the first thing that we would do is we are going to cut up our potatoes, and our potatoes need to be somewhat, you want to cut them length or slice them in this direction, and you kind of want to make them a little bit thick, but not too thick. You don't want them thin, because what we don't want to do is we do not want to fry these potatoes. We want them, when they're cooked, to be soft, almost like a boiled potato is soft, but not fried. If we fry it, then we've cooked it too far, and that is not what we're looking for. We're just looking for soft potatoes, but yet they need to be cooked all the way through. So these are probably, the slices are probably about 1/4 inch thick, each one of them. And once we get them cut like that, you could just cook them like this, but I like to speed up the process a little bit, so I like to cut them at least 1 more time so that they're just a little bit smaller pieces when I cook them. Okay, so there is our potato. Our onion we're going to do into pretty small pieces. Like you'll see here, I don't want them very big for sure, because I don't want to drown out the tortilla with big chunks of onion, but kind of just, so not tiny like minced, but fairly small. And once we get these chopped up, then we're going to take them over and we're going to cook the potatoes first. The onions we're going to put in at the very end. Once the potatoes are almost finished, we'll put those in, because we just want to cook the onions until they're just translucent. So it does not take very long to cook the onions. So anyways, we're going to take this over. We're going to get our oil hot in our pan, and then we're going to put the potatoes in, and we'll show you when we get to there. Okay, so I've put a little bit of olive oil into this pan. You can kind of see this potato is starting to cook just a little bit, like it just starts to bubble a little bit. So The oil is ready, so we're going to add in all of our potatoes. Now we don't want them all clumped up, so we'll just kind of put them in here one at a time. We want to make sure it's separated. I'm going to start off on a medium heat till I know that my oil is warm enough, and then I'm going to turn it down because, like I said, we do not want these things fried at all. Okay, I'm going to use a wooden spoon so I don't scratch up my pan. But you can see I've got enough oil in here to just about cover up most of the potato. If it doesn't, you don't need to worry about it, because as it cooks down, it will start to cover it. So again, we're just going to kind of cook this over medium heat, and it's kind of a slow process, but not like 20-minute slow. It might take maybe 7 minutes or something like that in order to cook these to the point where they're ready. So we'll get these cooked up. Before we add the onions, we'll show you what the potatoes should look like before you add your onions. Okay, so we're about halfway through cooking this. And you can see what you're looking for is you want the potatoes. You should be able to, I'm using a wooden spoon, and when they start getting to where they're cooked to the right amount, you should be able to cut them with the wooden spoon. You can see they start falling apart when you start cutting them. It's getting really close. Okay, we don't want to mash them. We just want to kind of cut them up into a little bit smaller pieces. Okay. And that's why I initially cut them a little smaller, because it kind of just speeds up the process a little bit. I could have cut them into quarters, and it would have sped it up even a little bit more. But I've got my heat turned down almost to low now, if not at low. Okay, now we're to the point where we're going to add our onion. And we're just going to slide that onion right into there. And we're just going to stir it in. Ooh, I got a nice big chunk right there I need to clean up. And in the process, we'll just keep on kind of cutting up our potatoes. Should be able to turn the heat up a little bit now that I've added the onion to it. So we'll put it back up there at a medium low. Like I said, this is something that they eat all the time, and the cool part about a tortilla, a Spanish tortilla, is you can eat it in the morning, you can eat it in the evening, you can eat it for lunch. They'll make sandwiches out of it, almost like an egg salad sandwich. It's very delicious. So using that rustic bread that we made last week, you could just take a couple slices of it, and then take some slice of this Spanish tortilla and put in the middle of it, and it is just absolutely delicious. I don't like egg salad sandwiches, but I love Spanish tortilla sandwiches. Okay, we're going to cook these onions until they are translucent, and once they get to that point, then we're going to take this whole concoction of potatoes and onions, and we're going to throw it into our bowl of mixed up eggs. It's getting pretty close. There's a few potatoes that are still a little bit crunchy that we need to get cut up, but you can see for the most part the potatoes are cut up. The onions are just about getting to where they're done also, but you can see there's no potatoes that are fried. You know, they're all just kind of soft. You'll know when you fry them because they turn brown, just like a French fry would, and you don't want that. Sometimes it happens and it's okay, but it's better if it doesn't happen. couple potatoes left here that are a little bigger than what I want them to be. And just keep kind of turning it over in the pan until everything's cooked up. But you can start seeing this is pretty soft. The potatoes are soft. The onions are pretty much translucent. We're going to go just a minute longer here to make sure the onions are done. Again, like I said, always use olive oil. It's good and healthy for you. It's part of the Mediterranean diet. Good olive oil. Okay, so I think we are pretty much there. So we're going to take this pan, we're going to put it over, we're going to take it over. Okay, we're going to take this over and we're going to add it to our, and we're just going to put the whole thing in here. Okay. And then we want to kind of just mix it in. We don't want it, you want to get that, you don't want to let it burn or cook. You don't want the eggs to start cooking. So mix it up good, okay? We're going to add in our pepper, which is 1 teaspoon, our salt, which is 1.5 teaspoons, and then we're going to mix this up good. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to put my pan back onto the stove so that it gets hot. Make sure I don't have any oil on the sides. It does kind of make a mess. Make sure my pan is nice and hot. Again, and make sure you can kind of, if you have any pieces that are too big at this point, you can kind of cut them up a little bit with the whisk, but looks like we're going to be good shape. This pan right here, I'm going to put just a little bit of oil in, so when I flip it, I get it heated up there a little bit. I'll just use that pan as my base. Again, we don't want to cook this too fast, so you know, really from start to finish, it kind of takes probably like 15 minutes. Usually when I make it, I usually make a couple of them because, like I said, they're good out of the fridge. They'll last in your fridge for, probably 5 days. They're fine in the fridge. So you can take them out, take a piece. They're good cold, they're good warm, they're good hot, however you like them. So you can just have almost like a snack to go on. Okay, so we got our pan, it's starting to heat up. Once our pan is warm enough to where I feel like it's ready to start cooking, then we're going to take our whole bowl and all of the contents. All right, looks like it's ready. Okay, and we're going to dump it in here. Okay, and again, you don't have to have a frittata pan. Okay, you could just use any non-stick pan, but we like to use this pan because it's just easier. Okay, I like to go along and pull the edges away and keep kind of letting the liquid kind of fall behind, just for one round here. Okay, and I'll take my pan and I'll put it on top. If you don't have a pan, it's no big deal. You can just or a frittata pan, you can cook it. Just keep it. You can keep it open. I've done it lots of times, and then you can use a plate to put over the top of it and flip it and slide it off. I've used a cutting board before. I've used all sorts of things. Don't think you can't make this if you don't have a special pan, because that's not the case. So again, we don't want to cook it too hot because the bottom, it will burn, and we don't want it to burn for sure. Okay, so we're gonna go one more round of getting this liquid. Peeled back and fall in behind. cover that back up. I'm gonna turn the heat way down. You can see I'm on a medium low is where I'm at. It's okay if it takes a little bit longer to cook rather than burning it. I'm gonna leave it there until I'm pretty confident that the bottom is cooked up. I'd like to see a little bit less liquid, okay, in here, if I could. But it's getting to the point now where the liquid doesn't want to flow, so it is cooking pretty good. So we're gonna let it go for maybe another 30 seconds. So it's been cooking there for maybe 3 minutes now, 4 minutes. All right, so I think it's ready to be flipped, okay? So with this pan, it makes it pretty simple. I just go like this, and you'll be able to see what the bottom looks like here. You can kind of see, it's kind of a nice brown, but it's not burnt, okay? So now we're just gonna cook this other side, same way. Just gonna let it keep cooking, and it'll take about the same amount of time to do the other side. And you'll be able to tell this middle section stays kind of jelly-like when it's not done. It should firm up. So as that egg in the middle starts cooking, it should firm up to where it doesn't jiggle. Okay, so like I said, you can see it's not jiggling anymore. We're gonna just flip it again, just to make sure the other side looks okay. Okay, it could still cook a little bit more. It's not completely. We don't want to cook the other side anymore, but this side can still cook a little more. So we're gonna let it keep cooking for just a hair longer to where that browns up a little bit more, because I think the center is still just a little bit uncooked. So maybe just a couple more minutes before it's finished. All right, so we are to the point where you can go. It's solid. Okay, there's not going to be any parts that are uncooked. We're going to grab a plate, put over the top of our pan. Okay, we're going to flip it. Okay, and there is our Spanish tortilla finished. We're going to let it cool for just a couple of minutes before we cut it. You can cut it lots of different ways. You can cut it like a pie. That's how we like to cut it. If you go to a restaurant or you go to a party somewhere, they usually cut it up into slices, almost like they'll cut it this way, they'll cut it this way into little squares, and then they'll use toothpicks to pull them out, and then they kind of serve them as little appetizers. But like I said, this is a staple in Spain. We had an exchange student that lived with us for a year, and we'd make tortillas for her, and she said that they tasted a lot like her mom's. So now she could have been homesick, she could have forgotten what her mom's tasted like, but this is pretty authentic for a Spanish tortilla. So anyways, we are going to, once it cools down, we'll cut it for you, and we'll make sure it tastes good. Okay, so it's been a few minutes, 5 minutes since we took it out of the pan, and now I'm just going to kind of show you what it should look like. This is you can see it's cooked all the way through. You can see the potatoes in there. You can see the onions in there. This is more than I can handle. All right, just to have it sitting there without, I mean, these are, delicious. That would make a good sandwich. But for now, it's gonna make a good dinner. Thanks for watching.
It's so yummy, Papa.